Hello everyone. So let's continue our discussion about the climate change. So as we described climate change, it's an area as long-term atmospheric conditions that includes temperature, participation, wind, humidity, and pressure. I think I listed it here. And solar radiation. This is just a reminder. Okay, so global climate change refers to the climate change um, and the frequency intensity of storms across the whole world. When we're saying global, we're talking about the whole world. And the global warming refers to an increase in average temperature and is the only one aspect of the climate change. So Earth's climate varies naturally, but disruptive changes are unfolding rapidly and human activities are accelerating them big time. There are three factors that exert most influence on the Earth's climate. One is the sun, that gives us light and warmth. Second is the atmosphere, which prevents major temperature shifts from night to day. Third is the ocean, which stores and transfers heat and moisture. So, if without the protective layers of gases, Earth would be much colder on average, and temperature difference between the night and day would be greater than they are. All right, so let's talk about the impacts of climate change. So, average temperature on our Earth, both air temperature over the land and the sea surface temperature have risen by 1.1 degrees Celsius in the past 100 years. And most of this increase is happened since 1970s. That's what the graphs are showing. So you can see here temperature difference from average 1880 to 2020 is cooler than average, warmer than average, and then these are the hottest years. So most recently we had the hottest years, and that's due to temperature rising. In the United States, temperatures in most areas have risen more than 1 full degree Fahrenheit just in a few decades. And the trend will continue because we're still emitting greenhouse gases. The ones that are in the atmosphere will continue to warm the globe for decades to come. And this picture here is showing you that temperature change. If it's more than 1.5, then it's red. Future changes in the temperature are predicted to vary from region to region. Polar regions, for example, are expected to experience the most severe warming. So they're going to be the warmest. A warmer temperature also means there'll be a change in participation. So the participation increased worldwide by 2% over the past century. Some regions of the world are receiving less rain and snow than usual, while the others are receiving more. So droughts have become more frequent and severe, harming agriculture and worsening the soil erosion and reducing water supply. And it also triggers wildfire. So this is showing you 50% increase if it's dark blue. As the colors get lighter, it's less of the increase. And then you probably noticed there were a lot of heavy rains recently, especially in India. So that has changed. So it's all due to climate change. That leads to flooding that kills dozens of people, leaves people homeless, and also impact the economy. So the frequency of extreme weather events, droughts, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes has tripled in the United States since the past. So if we compare it, this is the average value here, and compared to 1930, look at 2010. It's higher up. So here it's around 20-ish, and here it's more like 35. So climate extreme is kind of becoming the new normal. All right, so insurers, they have recorded a massive increase in losses from extreme weather, with one major insurer estimating tripling of losses worldwide. The hurricanes have intensified, with sea levels rising, and that all has increased the damage. um, the storms have inflicted on the coastal areas. So this is number of events. This is 1980s, and they have gone up compared to now. So weather-related insurance losses worldwide since has gone up. So with the hurricanes, the explanation kind of makes sense because the oceans, they have absorbed more than 90% of our planet's excess energy, right, from global warming. So the warmer ocean temperatures impart more energy to hurricanes. The energy drives higher wind speeds, increases the amount of airborne water vapor, resulting in heavier rainfall. So as a result, the number of intense hurricanes have increased. So as the world warms, mountaintop glaciers are disappearing. So there are few that remain, they're also shrinking. 1 out of 6 people worldwide lives in regions that depend on mountain meltwater as a source of fresh water. So many glaciers and tropical mountaintops have disappeared already. So mountains, they accumulate snow in winter and release meltwater gradually during the summer. So that's why some people depend on those for mountain meltwater for fresh water. So summer water supplies decline as climate change is happening. So people will have to look elsewhere for water, or if they can't find the source, then they'll have to move. And polar ice is also melting very quickly in the Arctic, where the temperatures have warmed faster than anywhere else. The ice sheet that covers the Greenland is melting faster and faster. In Antarctica, coastal ice shelves the size of Rhode Island have disintegrated as a result of contact with warmer ocean water. So that's another issue. This also contributes to climate change, and on average, this is the thickness of so mean cumulative change in glacier thickness since 1950s. It's going down, so the glaciers are shrinking. So as the sea ice is thinning, snow and ice melt, or as reflective surfaces, bare ground, or surface water are exposed. This reduces Earth's capacity to reflect light, creating a positive feedback loop. So the loss of Arctic sea ice has led to opening of new shipping lanes, and many countries are trying to take a position to claim the regions of Arctic for oil and mineral extraction. Arctic warming also is thawing permafrost. Permafrost means the area that's permanently frozen. So it's causing a release of underground methane, which again contributes to global warming. So we've been talking about sea levels, they have increased. And because of that, now there's more beach erosion, coastal flooding, saltwater intrusion, greater impact on localized rises in sea level is called storm surges, so more storm surges. And that's what you can see here, sea level rise. This is like around 0, and now it's at 24. So, as glaciers and ice sheets melt, it increases the runoff to oceans, causes sea levels to rise, and that's the reason that's one of the reasons we're seeing that the water is getting warmer, and water expands its volume as it gets warmer. So as we extract water from aquifers for drinking and to apply to farming, the wastewater that enters rivers and the excess irrigation water that runs off the farmland eventually reaches the ocean, adds to the sea level rise. So for this reason, residents of small island countries like Maldives may become climate refugees as sea levels rise. So in 2009, they held underwater cabinet meeting to bring attention to this fight. So part of the campaign or the purpose was to draw global attention to the impact of climate change. So today it's not just the Maldives people, major cities like Miami, they are also facing sea level rise challenges. So they're also, trying to bring attention and solutions to this. So as carbon dioxide concentrations in the atmosphere rise, the ocean absorbs more CO2. So the oceans have absorbed 1/4 of the CO2 we have added to the atmosphere. And that's altering the chemistry of oceans. It's making the water more acidic. It's lowering the pH. And that's known as ocean acidification. So as the seawater becomes more acidic, it's going to threaten marine life, coral, clams, oysters, mussels, crabs, because the carbonate ions, they start to build on their exoskeleton, the outer shell. So globally, ocean chemistry has already decreased by 0.1 pH unit. And they're already witnessing the impacts on the variety of marine life. The acidic water has already killed billions of oyster larvae in Washington. So this is a picture of coral reef. So this is healthy coral reef before bleaching. This is dead coral after bleaching. So coral reef have faced two additional risks from climate change. Warmer waters contribute to coral bleaching. They're deadly to corals. So all these factors concern residents in places like South Florida, Miami, Florida Keys. Because if this happens, it's kind of also can impact snorkeling, scuba diving sites for tourism and their economy. So marine biodiversity goes down. That's another one. Fisheries, because so many organisms depend on coral reefs for food and shelter, it can impact the whole ecosystem. So it's really having an impact. So organisms and ecosystems, they're all interconnected, and we just said that because coral reefs are part of a food web, it can impact the whole ecosystem. Organisms and ecosystems are impacted. It's modifying, the global warming is modifying the biological phenomena that rely on temperature. So many biological phenomena that rely on temperature have been modified due to global warming. In the spring, plants are leafing, insects are hatching, birds are migrating, animals are breeding earlier. So many animals are expanding their ranges towards cooler areas that are higher in elevation or latitude. So, for example, forests are greening up earlier in the spring, but the migratory songbirds, they're failing to arrive early in North America, Eastern North America. So they are trying to keep up with the change, but it has the consequences. So birds might not arrive when the trees are green. They might arrive late, and that can kind of impact their whole life and breeding seasons. So other thing I want to talk about is when there is a change in participation in the regions where the heavy storms are increasing. So erosion and flooding can pollute and alter aquatic systems. So when the rain and snow are decreasing, lakes, ponds, wetlands, and streams are drying up, which is also impacting the ecological system and biodiversity. So increased CO2 may actually spur growth, but this can be undone by increased risk of fire. So agriculture production may increase due to longer growing seasons, but may also be harmed by increasing likelihood of drought and flood. So a positive and a negative. All right, so drought, flooding, and storm surges, um, and sea level rise are already taking a toll on the, lives of millions of people. So warmer climate exposes many potential health hazards. So as the climate change proceeds, we are facing more heat waves, respiratory ailments due to more photochemical smog, expansion of tropical diseases like malaria into temperature latitudes, disease and sanitation problems for flooding of sewage treatment plants. So that's impacting the economy as well, injuries and drowning from worsened storms, just taking lives. So climate change can contribute to humanitarian, geopolitical, and nation security problems. Economies and infrastructure may be weakened. Oil and gas flow can be disrupted. People in some affected areas may become refugees or turn to tourism. And, so this is all going in, wrong direction. So researchers predict the economic cost of climate change will outweigh the benefits, especially as the climate change grows more severe. And climate change can widen the gap between rich and poor because poor people have less wealth and technology with which to adapt to climate change. So they rely more on the resources like local food and water that are sensitive to climate disruption. So this is, I'm not going to read through this chart. This is just a chart kind of telling you what are the impacts on the United States. So we've been talking about the sea level rise. So that's happening. And droughts, flooding, wildfires will worsen. Dry areas get drier, wet areas get wetter. Extreme weathers are becoming normal, and it's more frequent. So that's why it's becoming normal. There's a cost they impose on society that's going to grow. So sea level will rise an additional about 1 to 2 meters by 2100. So daily tidal flooding is accelerating. So it's having a lot of impacts. And we need to start thinking about what can we do about this. So as an individual, how can you contribute to decrease the rate at which the climate change is happening? So due to heat stress, disease, pollution, health problems arise. Drought, fire, pest outbreaks will continue to alter forest. Ocean acidification is impacting marine life. Um, Even though there's longer growing seasons, increased drought, heat stress, pests, and disease decrease the yield. So, we need to feed more people, so we need more of the yields. Snowpack will decrease in the west, water shortages will worsen in many areas. So, like I said, we need to start thinking about what we can do to mitigate the impact. So we're going to talk about that next. How can we respond to climate change? What are some things we can do on a daily basis to help out?